Beirut Exploded Views is a portrait of a location. And I have been having this idea for 3 years, I think, before 2014, to make a narrative, to create a narrative that is totally produced or written for that location. It's like making a film for a specific actor because of a certain feature in that actor. The location where I shot was not was part of the sea in the 80s. It became part of Beirut after the land reclamation that followed 1992 actually made out of that an extension of the city. Nowadays, physically, this is an empty lot where every contractor who is building in the downtown Beirut is obliged legally, contractually, to erect one floor or only one wall that is considered like a sample building that acts like an attachment to a contract. Urban-wise, what you have is a lot that looks like a forest of different walls and different elements that have nothing to do with one another. They are samples, they are like details of buildings that do not follow any order. So this place, this location changes with time, but it's totally absurd because there are freestanding structures. It's strange, but it's suggestive as well. It suggests narratives. This happened in 2014 when waves of refugees from Syria were coming to Lebanon and trying to inhabit every single vacant lot. And I thought this is a perfect, the land, the sample land as they call it, is a perfect land to suggest something like post-apocalyptic scenario. So it is a city that was maybe destroyed, was maybe deserted by its inhabitants. We don't know exactly what happened, but you all of a sudden see that there are few people coming and trying to settle in it and trying to continue living through this unlivable place. So it's a very abstract piece that was conceived as a portrait of this location. So I went to that location, drafted a plan for it, because of course nobody will give you a map of location. And I tried to conceive very structured way of not mapping it, but making a portrait of it. I was trying to seize the different facets of this location, and I was trying to identify routes of circulation. So within this maze, or let's say within this chaos of buildings, I was trying to find a path, a straight path, thinking that I will build a track for the camera to do a traveling. So in the drawing that I made, I identified the location where the perspective is best, where the camera could travel on a rail. And then I tried to imagine what will the camera film. And I thought of like making, approaching the narrative in a very architectural way. So it's south, north, west, east, and every time you see that camera movement that's seizing the northern facade or the western facade, every time you are traveling, you get a glimpse of a narrative. All of them would remain incomplete, but you can just add them up in your head as a viewer. And each one takes place in a different times of the day, as if seizing 24 hours of a day, at the same time seizing the 4 facets of the place. Definitely it's a portrait of location encountering a human presence. Human presence are, I mean, as I said, it's mainly men, because with refugees, there's a strong male presence in the public space. In the private space, there is like all the intimacy of the whole family. But in the public space, what is very dominant with refugees is male presence. Another social element that extremely visible is the relationship of refugees to smartphones. I think smartphones not only changed our attitudes, but also changed the human postures. The presence of the human being in the landscape have developed other type of postures because it's a lonely person with his or her smartphone. For example, this is like a lot of Europeans, the first time they encountered the refugees, like these are not refugees, these are not poor people, they all have phones. They only have phones. It's not they all have phones as if like they have other things as well. Every Syrian refugee would be ready to leave everything behind, but not his telephone, because this is his or her only connection to the rest of the world. This is his or her only connection to other relatives elsewhere. So it's extremely telling of the times, but also of social relationships. Yeah, there's a latent sadness in what you see in the film, but also there's a latent violence, and this is why you see the police in the end. You never know what happened. You have seen young adults and older men. I mean, you don't know what has happened, but obviously there's a crime that has happened. And I leave this violence a little bit buried in the narrative. So you see, in the narrative developing, you start by leading issues related to daily life, bringing water, pumping water into a shower, building the shower actually, but also trying to buy a mattress, buy a bicycle, buy things that are useful, or at least bring them from junk. In another level, you see, in another part of the narrative later, you see all of a sudden an eruption of fireworks. You don't know exactly what's happening. So there are moments of hope, moments of excitement, moments of anxiety, moments of seduction, and latent violence in the whole thing. And everything ends with this camera flying above the location, and it's only there where you see everything like archaeology, actually. And I like this eye that comes to look at the place from the future, not only from above. So you see it as architecture, but you see it as archaeology. It's there where I think the idea of not only location, that this is Beirut, that is actually next to that building and next to the sea, the heart of downtown Beirut, but it's also from time.